Welcome. This is Carol Mixon Crindle from SkillCheck, and today we're going to be talking about handling customer objections. Objections are opportunities to sell. Over the years, I've trained so many people, and they're always worried about, geez, what if someone says, oh, that's too expensive, or, they have some sort of issue, which is an objection to handle. But remember, at least the customer's communicating with you and interested in your product. An objection is anything the prospect says or does that is sort of an obstacle to closing the sale, but you can't really look at it as an obstacle that you can't overcome. And I want you to remember what we're trying to do in the sales call is we're trying to get the customer to reserve a space or come to visit. So those are the two objectives we have. And keep in mind, there are people that like to reserve something because they know they're going to have it available. And I'll give you a good example of that. We have a brand new theater near us, and you can reserve your seats. I love going online, picking my seat, and sometimes I'll even take it a different time because I'm like, oh, look how many people are there, or oh, I want that seat. So I'll take it for a different time. So keep in mind, people are getting more and more used to having something reserved for them when they get there so they don't have to hassle or have the probability of that not being available. So on that phone call, you're trying to reserve a space or get them to down to the store to visit so you can show them what options they have. Remember, there are common objections. And I've written some down here that I hear very often. And first and foremost is probably price. And I tend to be with the stores that I've had, I would tend to be the leader in the market. I would have some of the highest prices. I've got very nice stores. I've had some stores that maybe aren't the best, but I try to keep my prices high, and especially competitive with the large companies, the REITs. I'm going to be right there with them. Another is rodents. Do you have mice, cockroaches? I mean, we have a variety of things that can be problematic in self-storage, and they could have had a problem at another store. And sometimes also just accessibility. If you literally have to go upstairs to get your couch up there or something like that, that does make it more difficult for them to move into your location. The security, if you don't have good security, or they may be asking, maybe the last place they were at had poor security. Availability, there's another issue because they're worried about getting the right size on the right day. And so that's really important to people. And the location of the space. Some people want drive up, some people like indoor where it's the climate's controlling the space. And again, upstairs or hallways, those can be positive or negative depending on how you look at it. I tend to not say upstairs ever. We just have different levels. I don't say upstairs, especially if you have an elevator, because they're really not taking it upstairs. I don't want them to think that they're having to literally go upstairs. But some of those weird locations can also save people some money. So there are some options, even with your, what might be common objections. Objections are buying signals. And it really does tell you that the customer's interested or they wouldn't be involved in asking you these kind of questions. So you can tell how interested a person is just by their questions. So don't be afraid of those questions that they ask that might feel like, oh no, it makes you feel uncomfortable, but don't worry about those because they are leading you to making the sale. So these objections really are an integral part of the sales call. So if the customer doesn't really voice any objections or ask questions, you might be fairly certain that they may not be going to buy from you or to come down to visit you. So look at these objections and questions as positive. They may say, oh, wow, you guys, you have to have insurance? And say, well, most storage properties, yes, you are required to either have proof of insurance or to purchase our insurance. So that's it, and handle it in a very easy way. And don't really get nervous or avoid the question that they have too or their objection. It's a perfect opportunity to sell your store's features and overcome those objections. And that's your goal, is to overcome that and to move on and get the customer to reserve or to visit. So listen to the customer's complete question. They may say, hey, have you ever had any break-ins? And be careful not to interrupt and like, oh gosh, no, we've never had any, or, you want to be honest. That's what I want to say here. But the interruption may cause further objections if you're like, oh, yeah, we've never had a problem. Don't worry about that, because it comes off somewhat rude. When you interrupt them, you're objecting to their objection. So if you refuse to listen, their next step may be just to end the phone call and like, okay, forget that. They're not even listening to what I had to say. So use active listening methods and skills because that's really how you're going to acknowledge the customer's concerns. So there's several things that you can do here. And there's sort of a wrong way to do this and a right way. You don't want to exaggerate or like, oh gosh, we have never had a problem with mice or, rodents of any kind because people bring those in their boxes actually, so we don't know that when we may ever have a problem, but you don't want to avoid the question either. You want to acknowledge their concerns and say, yes, it is so important for us to really keep a handle on pest control. We have monthly pest control. We actually can even, if you wanted extra protection, we can put some uh, bait in your space. There's some obvious things that you could do to help them with that. But you want to always keep a positive attitude. If they said, have you ever had a break-in? And said, actually, we have had over the years, but typically it was someone that gave someone else a key or they knew that their friend had stored something there and they went in to get it. But you want to be aware of your tone of voice and be honest and tell them what you do to prevent that. And that would be like, well, one of our suggestions is to make sure that you don't give anybody else your key. You want to make sure you get a great lock. And we have these locks that are here that are specifically for self-storage, and they just are really excellent. And people can't just, get them off with bolt cutters or something like that. So and that's a great way to sell what you have, the locks that you have at your own property. So remember, you also have to really practice the selling and practice your handling objections. So if you have certain objections about your store, write those down and then come up with the common answers of overcoming those objections or questions that customers have. Like if you think that for example, if you have stairs, you think, well, how am I going to get around that? Or if you have a lift as opposed to an elevator, because people have to put their goods on the lift, they have to walk up the stairs and then but their goods are get upstairs. But it is a little bit to overcome. I just generally say we have a lift. I don't explain how that all works until they get there, and then I show them and just say, wow, it's so easy to get your stuff up to the top, and then you get some exercise too. So even the best of the task or the job or hobby or sports, practice. So you want to practice selling the objections that you need to overcome at your particular store. Thank you so much for listening. Again, this is Carol Mixon-Crindle from SkillCheck. If you're interested in finding me, go to info@skillcheck.com or call our 800 number, or you can go on our website and find out all of the different opportunities you have to learn about self-storage and really have fun and happy renting.